This is the face of Afghanistan in exile. These children have never seen their homeland. They were born in the refugee camps in northwest Pakistan, in overcrowded tents and primitive makeshift buildings. They don't play like Western children. Life is too serious here. And the stories they are told have a harsh reality, for they begin in the villages of Afghanistan when the Soviet tanks moved in and soldiers came to the door, and life was never to be the same again. Every man and woman in the camp lost someone, a son, a father, a child. Many lost brothers and sisters, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, and of course, neighbors. It's estimated that over 1 million people died during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Many more lost their homes, their animals, their work, and 5 million became refugees. They thought they would soon return to Afghanistan, but a decade later, they still wait to go home.
Kabul, a city encircled by mountains, and for the past week, a capital ringed by Russian steel. As we flew in yesterday evening, filming through the airplane window, the size of the Russian build-up was spread out alongside the runway. The transport planes, which are believed to have brought in an airborne division. Also on display, dozens of troop-carrying helicopters wrapped against the cold, and scores of armored personnel carriers and tanks. NBC cameraman Peter O'Connor took these pictures before security guards stopped him filming. There's no telling where the armor was heading, but observers here say that with the capital in control, the Russians are turning their attention to crushing the anti-communist rebels in the provinces.
For many Afghans, the guerrilla warfare began long before the Soviet invasion of 1979 made the world take notice. The majority of these people are proud, deeply religious, turning to Islam for their moral strength, and seeing only evil in the godlessness of communism. Even so, they were ill-prepared for the ruthlessness of the invading troops, as tanks moved relentlessly across the northern border. This was no longer a confrontation between guerrilla and aggressor, soldier meeting soldier, for everyone was at risk, however young, however old, weak or defenseless. The Afghans took to the roads, moving steadily towards the borders of Iran and Pakistan, exhausted, driven on by the gunfire and the burning behind them. 3 million were to find their way to camps in northwest Pakistan to become the largest population of refugees anywhere in the world. Today they live in 323 camps, helped by at least 130 aid agencies under the overall control of the government of Pakistan.
What else do you need in your different program? This has all been put in here in a very short way.
One of the first of these aid agencies was the Salvation Army. They had worked in the country for exactly 100 years and had a sound operational structure, as well as being well qualified and keen to tackle the considerable health problems of the refugees.
See whether you see any omissions, what should get more emphasis, what should get less emphasis.
10 months after they submitted their plans to the Pakistan Commissioner for Refugees, the Salvation Army was given the go-ahead to work in the camp at Ghazi. It was August 1982.
We were given 21,000 people who came to an area which was basically desert area with no facilities at all. Their nearest water supply was a river 3 miles away. And so we began in this situation, and to build relationships with the people who we were working amongst, we began just holding curative health clinics. And this was to help us build rapport with the refugees themselves, who are people with great pride, people who are devoutly religious. And so we had, even though we had people from the northern province of Pakistan working with us, and they had a lot in common, this period of about 6 months was necessary. And then after that time we felt that we could begin primary healthcare activities, for even at this time there was no longer the emergency situation of those early days.
Mostly, it's the men who attend the clinics and who bring the children for treatment, because the Islamic rule of purdah is strictly observed even here in the camps. Women stay together, don't mix with men other than their husbands, and don't move freely in the community. It's a custom with deep religious roots, and to break it brings shame to the whole family. Now, in their own villages, women enjoyed greater freedom. Generation after generation of families grew up alongside each other. They knew their neighbors. But here in the camps it is different. They are living among strangers from different villages and different tribes. They don't know anyone, and they tell us they are frightened. Observing purdah, they say, is their only protection. These women and girls are widows and orphans, and in a society where men hold the power, life is especially difficult for them. Without a man to protect them, they have no status, and they talk without hope. We asked them about the practical problems they face in the camp. Purdah, it seems, makes even meeting the simplest basic need a problem. Well, water is difficult to get, they tell us. And it's difficult when you go to the latrine, because there is no water, no latrine, nothing.
We realised that there were many needs amongst the women and children, and because of their society being one of purdah, where the women folk cannot come out, it was important that we had access to the tents. And so we prepared a primary health care team whose responsibility it was to visit the tents and to encourage the women folk to come to such things as antenatal clinics, bring their under 5 children to a well baby clinic.
Primary health is something we all take for granted in the West. The preventative health program initiated and developed by the Salvation Army is a new concept for the Afghans, but it is vital here in the overcrowded refugee camps. It includes immunization, monitoring child development, and antenatal and postnatal care. Often it's the women who most need medical help who don't come to the clinics. In spite of the antenatal care offered, most women rely on the help of older women in the camp when it comes to the actual birth, only calling in the Salvation Army's midwives when there are complications. These twins were born 10 days ago. The health visitor is concerned. Have you fed your children today? She wants to know. I don't have enough milk, comes the reply. Others have done it for me, and I have another 1-year-old son. He is sucking, and these are 2. Infant mortality is a frightening statistic here in the camps. 3 out of every 10 children will die before they reach their 5th birthday. About 20% of the women have problems during and after childbirth, but the major health problem among the women is respiratory chest infection. About half of the women suffer from bronchitis or pneumonia, and tuberculosis is prevalent throughout the camps. The health team immunize against preventative diseases and fight a continual battle against diarrhea, dysentery, and malaria. Today, the Salvation Army is responsible for 100,000 refugees in 6 of the camps in Pakistan. Public health is a major concern because disease spreads rapidly here, so pure water is a must. Food needs to be protected from flies and other insects. And the latrine inspections and maintenance is a regular chore that cannot be neglected. Every opportunity to improve hygiene and prevent the spread of disease must be used well. The camps are overcrowded, with 10 to 20 people living in tents or makeshift shelters. Health visitors give talks to anyone who will stop and listen, but getting the message across is a slow process.
We are still not having the impact that we would like on the primary healthcare aspect of the programme, and so plans are in hand now to increase the teaching, to make teaching in healthcare aspects more readily available to a larger group who we hope ultimately will go back into the community and within their own smaller communities teach the message of good health.
Almost 3/4 of the Salvation Army's staff strength in the camps are Afghan nationals. Professionals who fled after the invasion pass on their skills to lay workers, like this group of community health supervisors.
We are aware that anything that we do should be preparing these people for when they return to their own country. We realise that with the exodus of so many people from Afghanistan, that there will be a real need for people who have skills of any kind who will have to help rebuild the country to which they've come from.
The belief in a future back in their own country is the spur that keeps the refugee going. The withdrawal of Soviet troops in February 1989 did not bring the hoped-for return across the border. Instead, there was more fighting, this time between the Soviet-backed government and the Afghan guerrillas. The fighting sent more than 15,000 new refugees fleeing across the border at a time when Pakistan officials hoped that their days as refugee hosts were numbered.
We are spending something like $1 million a day on the upkeep of refugees. It's a large amount, but if you break it down and divide it over 3 million, it is no more than 30 cents a day per head on all that I have mentioned, on their shelter, food, water supply, medical facilities, education, and what have you. 30 cents. On food, perhaps you spend not more than 15 to 20 cents a day. Now, I leave it to you. Is that a very extravagant living or a very affluent living? 20 cents a day? Not even in Pakistan, not even by our standards. I would say that we are being able to just merely sustain the refugees to a minimum standard and no more with this amount. And it's not a very happy life, a refugee's life. You go and see them in the camps. It's a very miserable life.
Most of the refugees live between grief and frustration. This woman escaped with 4 others when troops killed her 3 sons, her son-in-law and brother-in-law. The women hid in underground tunnels used to bring water to the village wells. Today she feels that she has gained little by coming to the camp.
We are living under a shelter, but it is not a home. There is no fire. We are living at death's door. We are lying in God's doorway. We cannot feed the children. We are dying in such a house. You can see, and so does God.
Afghan elders and members of the guerrilla movement, the Mujahideen, meet frequently. They are deeply religious and are fighting what they describe as a holy war, Islam against communism. They believe that God led them into exile so that they could regain health and strength to free their country.
Everybody was worried and disappointed. This was their policy, to kill everything. They killed donkeys and horses, also the young and old. They bombed everywhere. They used a kind of missile and burnt the harvest and forest. They destroyed the houses and burnt forests and gardens by firebombs. They burnt everything.
When the invasion started, the planes flew from Russia like birds. After their invasion, fighting started between Russians and Afghans. They started bombing, and they wanted to damage the villages and finish Islam in Afghanistan. They said, "You must leave and forget your religion." But we said, "Our religion is truth, our prophet is right, and we believe in Islam." So we clashed with them, but in the end, we were compelled to take refuge. We had to take refuge because as we prayed, they bombed our villages.
Depression, boredom, frustration, despair. These are emotions that eat into the hearts and minds of the refugees. They came to the camps for what they believed would be a very short time. Now they wait indefinitely for the day it will be safe to take their families home. And for some, it is already too late, far too late.
One of the other things that we found with these people who had come from their own routines in their own country was that a lot of the men just had time on their hands and were sitting around. And in some areas where people are working, the incidence of psychosomatic illness of the mind, was about 60%, and so we saw another need there to give them meaningful activity. Also, they were a skilled people. I think that's one thing that we found out as we moved along in the program, were that here, though they were not in their own homeland, had a lot to offer from within their community. And so in October '83 a vocational training program was commenced in an effort to maintain traditional skill and to impart training to the young men so that they would have something of a future when they ultimately return.
کله چې سالوشن نامې پروګرام یې شروع کړ په غازی کمپ کې صحي پروګرام.
When the Salvation Army started the medical program in the camps, we found that much illness was psychosomatic and the people were unemployed. The main point is that most people didn't have an income to improve their living conditions. And since the people of Afghanistan are very proud and self-sufficient, they don't like to receive free handouts. Some felt humiliated. So the Salvation Army started its vocational training to improve mental health and to generate income. First, we provide skills training. In the camp, we provide materials and wages, and then we sell the finished products: leather bags, leather wallets, briefcases, sandals. About 40 people are working as producers in leather work. Besides production, we have a revolving fund, and we provide a loan and equipment to those who are trained or have a skill to enable them to start work.
Opportunities for women are more limited because traditionally they don't go out to work. But embroidery provides good employment for home workers and reflects the high level of skills that many Afghans possess. Traditional crafts, like those we have seen, attractive though they are not so easy to sell in a country like Pakistan, which has an abundance of weavers, leather workers and tailors. So skills like metalwork may hold the key to greater prosperity in the future. As well as learning their craft, the men are taught basic literacy and numeracy, skills which the Salvation Army believes will help them to build a better future.
Jim Jahat, Jahat Fars de, Ahmad Jahata Tlale de, Zaba Ham Jahata Larsham.
The Salvation Army is one of the agencies that came to our help very early on in this humanitarian task. In fact, they started their operations in 1982. And I know that because I've been here since 1980. All the people who have been working, I have even visited their camps. They came in 1982 mainly in the health field, because that was an important sector at that time. Gradually, they have been expanding their activity, the scope of their work, and now they are also working on the vocational training. And I have seen some of the work done by them, particularly in the leather work. And I think it's a very good thing to make the refugees useful citizens when they go back. Looking after them here is one thing, but having an eye on the future, when they go back, they should go back with some skills, some income generating capability, and that is precisely what the Salvation Army is doing in addition to its main function. And I'm very glad to say that in both these fields they have done as well, if not better, than many other voluntary agencies.
One of the objects of the project has been to utilize the Afghan people themselves. Okay, there are 3 million people coming from another country and are amongst the millions of refugees in the world today. But we feel it's important that they should retain their identity, and our activities are geared at helping them maintain dignity, their pride, and to enhance their life as a community.
There are some who question whether the Salvation Army should be working in such a political situation. But those who are in the camps, who are working with the refugees, have no doubts. They see it as loving their neighbor, of meeting suffering and despair with concern and compassion. They step outside of the political arena and work as they believe God wants them to work, seeing the goodness of these people, understanding their frustration, and working alongside them to build better health, self-respect, and a knowledge of the love of Christ. Their prayer is that these children will one day find the peace and the harmony they need back in Afghanistan, the homeland they have never seen.